Alan Carr's Easy Way to Stop Smoking opens with a bold, almost provocative invitation. There is a simple, painless, and permanent way to quit smoking that spares you the misery of withdrawal, none of the heavy-handed willpower gymnastics, and doesn't hand you one addiction in exchange for another. Carr frames quitting not as a sacrifice but as a liberation, and he promises that fear, the fear of life without cigarettes, the fear of withdrawal, and the fear that quitting will wreck your pleasure, can be dissolved once you understand what smoking really is and what it does to you. The book is structured as a guide that blends a deeply personal story with a practical, habit-disrupting formula. Carr's own life serves as a blueprint. A 33-year, 100-a-day smoker who, after a long, trying path, finally stopped on July 15, 1983, and committed himself to helping others quit. He describes the moment of realization that the easy way is not about denial or heroism, but about seeing clearly that cigarettes do nothing useful, that life without them can be richer, and that fear can be unlearned when you stop mislabeling nicotine as a life-saver. He travels the world with clinics and a high claimed success rate, insisting that his approach has to be experienced to be believed. Yet even as the book brims with these success stories, the tone remains steady, skeptical of scare tactics, and unapologetically hopeful. A smoker can be free and can enjoy life more fully as a non-smoker. Carr anchors his case in a preface and warning that lay out the book's core philosophy. The easy way is not magic. It's methodical, it's about removing fear, and it's about demystifying nicotine addiction. He rejects shaming, guilt trips, and the idea that quitting is a grim sacrifice. Instead, he promises a process that makes quitting feel natural, almost inevitable, once the right frame of mind is adopted. He acknowledges the resistance he encountered from parts of the medical establishment and the media, which is ironic given that standard medical guidance often leans on nicotine replacement therapies that can perpetuate the sense that quitting is a battle to be endured rather than a transformation to be celebrated. Yet Carr's rhetoric is not anti-science or anti-establishment for its own sake. It's insurgent in the sense that it challenges the prevailing stories we tell ourselves about quitting. He calls on readers to approach the book with an open mind and to spread the easy way message, trusting that the method's clarity will speak to their own lived experience. At the heart of the early chapters is a radical reframing of the quitting process. Carr identifies two main reasons people fail to quit. First, they fail to follow the book's instructions. Second, they fail to grasp the underlying principles. With this insight, the easy way presents an inverted approach to quitting. Rather than piling on warnings about what you'll lose or the misery you'll endure, the book shifts the perspective so that quitting feels like a cure rather than a sacrifice. Carr even advises readers to keep smoking and read the book in full before attempting to stop, arguing that only by finishing the book can they reach a moment of revelation when the mind recognizes that cigarettes do nothing useful and that life without them is not merely bearable but better in every dimension. The program is thus not a countdown to abstinence but a mental re-education, a reorientation that makes freedom feel natural. The opening chapters also delineate a formidable problem Carr calls the trap. Smoking, he explains, is the most subtle trap imaginable. It hooks you with a first cigarette that often tastes unpleasant, yet somehow triggers a self-reinforcing cycle. The trap blends nicotine addiction with social and media brainwashing, so that smokers rationalize their habit even as they dread its consequences. The real problem, Carr argues, isn't the act of smoking itself but the internal dynamics that make quitting feel daunting. The illusion that smoking provides real relief or pleasure, and the social pressures that keep the habit alive. A central contribution of his theory is the reframing of nicotine addiction. Nicotine is a drug, a fast-acting one, and the withdrawal pangs aren't a heroic physical battle but a mild, largely mental sense of deprivation, the emptiness that drives the next cigarette. The body can shed most nicotine quickly, in roughly 3 weeks, but the mind, shaped by brainwashing, resists the idea that it doesn't need nicotine at all. Once you see through the illusion, stopping becomes a straightforward realization, rather than a heroic test of will. The Easy Way's promise of relief hinges on the claim that life without smoking is not a loss but a gain. Carr highlights genuine pleasures that come with being a non-smoker: better health, more energy, substantial financial savings, greater freedom, and a sense of control over one's life. He uses a vivid hunger analogy to explain withdrawal. The craving is like a mild hunger that passes when the mind is no longer convinced that a cigarette is the answer. The aim is not to persuade readers that quitting will be easy in the moment, but that the frame, being free from a drug trap, will render the experience of quitting not only bearable but rejuvenating. The book's narrative blends anecdote, clinical-sounding observation, and brisk humor, all aimed at dismantling fear and replacing it with a lucid confidence that quitting is a rational, liberating choice. A key through line in these early sections is the idea that quitting isn't about denying oneself pleasure, but about reclaiming the mind from a lifelong conditioning. Carr invites readers to question the deep assumptions about smoking and to replace fear-based reasoning with a clear-eyed understanding of addiction and brainwashing. He anticipates skepticism and acknowledges his own previous doubts, yet his tone remains defiant and hopeful. The smoking trap is solvable, and the path to freedom is within reach for anyone who completes the book and follows its guidance. As the book moves toward its first substantive chapters, Carr begins outlining a practical program that reframes the quitting act as the removal of a mistaken belief: the belief that cigarettes offer relief, comfort, or continuity in life. The process becomes a revolution in thinking about smoking, one that requires dispelling two core myths: that nicotine is harmless or manageable, and that the social brainwashing makes quitting impossibly hard. The promise is clarity. Once you grasp the true nature of addiction and brainwashing, quitting can be surprisingly easy and even enjoyable. In the pivotal middle portion, Carr shifts from urging readers to quit to dismantling the myths that keep people smoking. He calls back to the deepest joys of being free: energy, vitality, money, and the eradication of the dark, self-repudiating shadows that come with the habit. The real victory, he argues, is not merely good health or wealth, but the restored self-respect that comes from no longer being a slave to the cigarette. A crucial point emerges: the urge to smoke is less about enjoying cigarettes than about the illusion that smoking provides some secret advantage. This sets the stage for the core argument of the section. Quitting isn't about willpower, it's about recognizing and overcoming brainwashing that makes quitting feel like a sacrifice. In Chapter 21, The Advantages of Being a Smoker, Carr shows how smokers rationalize their habit by listing supposed calm, social ease, and stress relief. He dissects these so-called benefits as largely illusory, masking a dependency that thrives on withdrawal relief and self-deception. The real benefits of smoking, he argues, are moments of relief from withdrawal and the comforting lies we tell ourselves to justify ongoing use. He treats the topic with practical precision, aiming to reveal how the nicotine trap governs choices and self-image far more than any true, lasting benefit. Chapter 22, The Willpower Method of Stopping, sits at the heart of his thesis. Carr argues that the common belief that quitting demands immense willpower and sacrifice is the trap itself. The willpower method is any approach that makes the quitter feel they must endure a loss, and the book traces how a first taste can foster a comforting belief that one can stop whenever they choose. But social settings, habit, and routine gradually convert those cigarettes into a daily addiction, and the mind's perception of sacrifice deepens the craving. The turning point comes when readers see that relapse is less about nicotine chemistry and more about brainwashing, the illusion of sacrifice that makes quitting feel intolerable. He introduces the monster metaphor. A small craving in the stomach grows into a larger mental monster, feeding rationalizations like "life is too short" or "I've picked the wrong moment." The 3-week myth of withdrawal is reinforced. Physical cravings fade, but the mental doubt lingers and can become the most dangerous window for relapse. The prescription is simple: Reframe cravings as a sign that the cigarette was never truly needed and learn to live with the mind's misperception dissolving as the truth takes hold. Chapter 23, Beware of Cutting Down, tackles a widely practiced trap, using cutting down as a bridge to quitting. Carr insists that cutting down simply keeps nicotine addiction alive and can become a form of prolonged suffering, with longer intervals between cigarettes intensifying the reward when one does light up. He argues that the physical addiction is often easier to manage than the mental hold of the belief that cigarettes are a crutch, and cutting down makes that belief stronger, not weaker. The closing exhortation is stark: cut down and endure lifelong self-torture, or stop completely and honor the truth that cigarettes offered no real pleasure, only relief from withdrawal. Chapter 24, Just One Cigarette, debunks the notion of a casual puff. There is no such thing as a single slip in a lifelong addiction, the book warns, because one cigarette restarts the chain that the mind believes it can control. Carr invites readers to picture a lifetime of dependence and the toll that would take, urging a decisive stance. Stop completely and treat every cigarette as part of a lifelong trap. Chapter 25, Casual Smokers, Teenagers, Non-Smokers, expands the lens to show how social pressures shape behavior. Carr argues that even those who claim to enjoy smoking are often masking deeper dependencies and self-deceptions. He highlights the social fear of appearing weak or antisocial as a force that drives people to smoke more, not less. The discussion touches on teen smoking, the moral panic around youth addiction, and the broader project of preventing addiction by addressing nicotine's trap early. The takeaway is that smoking is not a genuine social good. The social world often amplifies the habit, while a shift in social norms can become a powerful catalyst for quitting. Chapter 26, The Secret Smoker, exposes the private choreography many smokers perform to hide their habit from partners and friends. Carr uses a Columbo-like flourish, "Just one small point, sir," to illustrate how secrecy becomes its own burden, eroding trust and dignity while reinforcing dependence. The secret smoking cycle intensifies shame and fear of exposure, reinforcing the habit as a coping mechanism rather than a voluntary choice. This chapter underscores the moral and relational costs of smoking, reinforcing the case that nicotine addiction is not merely a personal failing but a social and emotional burden. Chapter 27, A Social Habit, maps the broader cultural shift around smoking. Carr notes a transition from smoking as a marker of sophistication to smoking as a stigmatized, antisocial act. Public venues have seen more people stepping away from cigarettes, and smokers often feel self-conscious about lighting up. The social revolution around smoking emerges as a powerful lever for quitting. If society no longer supports the habit, the motivation to quit becomes stronger and more urgent. Chapter 28, Timing, wrestles with when to quit. Carr concedes that timing matters and acknowledges the lure of waiting for a moment when life is more tolerable. Yet he reframes the problem: the now is the best time, even if it's not ideal. The brainwashing makes many delay, hoping for a moment of perfect ease, but the book argues that the hardest and best moment is the moment you decide to act. He uses a pool diving parable to show how waiting for perfect conditions often leads to never starting, and he reveals a subtle shift in his method. Rather than urging readers to wait through stress relief, the simplest path is to confront the worst moments and prove you can live through them without smoking. Chapter 29, Will I Miss the Cigarette? Addresses the fear of social withdrawal and missing a cigarette in social context. Once the nicotine monster is dead, the remaining brainwashing fades, and life becomes fully livable without tobacco. The sense of social ritual around meals and gatherings remains, but it's no longer tied to relief from withdrawal. Ex-smokers, Carr notes, should pity smokers rather than envy them, because smokers carry ongoing damage while ex-smokers gain energy, health, and freedom. Chapter 30, Will I Put on Weight? Tackles the fear that quitting will lead to weight gain. He explains that withdrawal can trigger increased appetite, but substitutions like sweets or overeating often make things worse. Weight gain isn't inevitable if you adhere to the program, and he even points readers toward Easy Way for those concerned about weight control. The core message is that weight concerns should not derail the decision to quit. Once nicotine leaves the body, confidence returns, and that confidence helps resist unhealthy substitutions. Chapter 31, Avoid False Incentives, warns against external motivators that can backfire, such as holidays, fancy cars, or office bets. Carr argues these incentives are flimsy and can add pressure, making quitting harder. The emphasis remains on what you gain by not smoking: health, energy, money, confidence, peace of mind, and freedom, rather than any external reward that could become a new crutch. The book's point is clear. Cigarettes offer nothing of true value, and real gains come from living without them. Chapter 32, The Easy Way to Stop, distills the method into 2 simple steps. Decide you will never smoke again, and don't pretend it's hard, rejoice. The essence of the Easy Way is that the entire trap hinges on brainwashing, not chemistry alone, and that readers must dismantle myths before extinguishing the last cigarette. Carr narrates his own dramatic shift from smoking 100 cigarettes a day to 0, emphasizing that the crucial moment is the decision to stop hoping for the urge to disappear and to declare, once and for all, that you will never smoke again. He stresses that many people fail when they treat quitting as a temporary trial. The method requires a permanent, unwavering commitment. The conclusion offers hopeful testimony. Many ex-smokers find not just relief but a profound improvement in health, energy, and life quality once the habit is broken. The overarching message remains that quitting can be surprisingly easy when you stop believing you're giving something up and start recognizing you're gaining what you've wanted all along: control over your life and self-respect. Across these chapters, Carr maintains a practical, candid, and paradoxically buoyant tone. He blends intimate storytelling with a methodical dismantling of smoking myths, arguing that the hardest part of quitting is not the body's chemistry but the mind's stubborn belief that cigarettes are a necessary companion. The Easy Way's core claim, that fear can be dissolved and that the act of quitting can feel like a liberation rather than a loss, never loosens its grip. The book invites readers into a narrative where the quit is not a heroic self-denial but a natural re-emergence into a life unshackled by nicotine. It's a narrative of awakening, seeing the trap clearly, letting go of the illusion of pleasure, and stepping into a life where health, energy, money, and self-respect can finally take center stage. The journey is not a choir of doom but a confident march toward freedom, guided by a frame of mind that proves, with each page, that the Easy Way is not only possible but inevitable for those who choose it and finish the book.